Hey folks, we're live. How you doing?
Hey,
Special episode. Yeah, we are doing. It's special episode. I should probably do the thing like a real streamer does, where they wait a few minutes for people to get the notification and come in instead of just immediately introducing the show. While we're waiting, what did we think of the video intro? The new video, the relatively new video intro with all the dice rolling.
I like it.
Oh, I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I like it. I just look at it and I'm like, we use none of these dice.
Yes, true. That is very true.
Hey, those dice mean gaming.
Yeah, they're symbolic of gaming. And you wouldn't be able to do it with fudge dice. Just keep doing pluses and then zeros.
Pluses and minuses.
Yeah, that's how we do it. I'm going to put up a little banner so that people know who tune in afterwards that we're not doing a full show tonight. But hey, for those of you who are watching this now or who get this video later on demand on YouTube, we're not doing a full show. Rebel's not with us, which sounds much more severe than I meant. Rebel isn't available.
Yes.
They are not available.
Yes. They are still with us, just not with us.
Yeah, that was just and we're just gonna talk shop a little bit today so that it's not a complete loss and maybe go a little quick. So how are we feeling? What are we playing? What are we doing? What are we enjoying?
What are we playing in general or for this podcast?
Yeah. In general, we could talk about the game we're playing, or we could talk about other games we are playing if that's I don't know, whatever. This is just
I do think that
I've been in correspondence with Mark Cleveland a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not that great at running Runners in the Shadows.
I would love it if that's the majority of the correspondence. Hello, Brendan. As you know, you're not that great.
No, he's been giving me a lot of advice, which is really awesome, actually.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yes. It is fun. I talk to him very rarely on Discord and on Twitter, which I barely use. And it is interesting. I like his take on this. I wish we could get him as like a guest GM for like part of this. That would just be fun.
Be pretty cool.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah,
we should float that by
ask him.
Yeah.
I have to say too. I think it's going to be like, I can't imagine. We haven't played any games that. Well, that's not true. We played Brennan's, but we haven't played. Like, for example, we haven't played a game that I designed on here, and I can only imagine what it's like if somebody were to play a game that you designed and not play it the way it's supposed to be played, but it's the players are still having fun. Like, because we're having a blast. We're playing very wrong, but we're having a great time doing it. Right? It'd be like if you like went and saw people playing basketball, but they were kicking the balls into the net. Like, they look like they're having a good time. They're not doing it right, but they're accomplishing what they want to do, which is have a good time, right? So I think it's definitely interesting. It's been great to hear from Mark, to hear like, hey, here's what I would do differently, or here's how you're supposed to do this sort of stuff. But I do have to say,
it has improved the game. I feel like
yeah.
I think we're either way though. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely podcast first. That's sort of the that's how the show works. We do. That's why it's an hour long. There's very few games that are designed, or like tabletop RPGs that are designed to be done in an hour.
Long chunks.
Yeah. Because normally you can't schedule time with friends. It's so rarely that when you get them, you hang on to them as long as possible. But yeah, it's fun, but it also, like, part of it, the mission statement is maybe teaching people how to play, or getting them encouraged to play something other than that other game with the dungeons and the
Well, we do not include those.
The one that the one that includes the dungeons. So but yeah, I agree. I do think that, I mean, it's I don't know for the podcast philosophy or whatever, but I do think whether we're playing it to the letter or even with some of the letters, we are introducing to some people something they may not have known existed, right? There are going to be people who listen to this. I mean, I didn't know this version of this game existed until we started playing it. And that's not to say anything about the game. That I have my knowledge of indie RPGs is only so great. But it's been very cool, and I'm sure, I mean, I hope that people would hear us having fun playing it the way we're playing it, and then actually read the rule book and play it properly in the future games if they decide.
Part of it is also a challenge, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like, oh, you think you could do better? You probably can. Pick up this game and play it the right way. Yeah. So speaking of, I'm almost positive, and where I'm qualifying this is all the back in the before time con games. I don't think I've ever played a game that was Forged in the Dark. Right. I don't think I've ever done a game that's based on. I can't remember. How much experience do either of you have with it? Blades in the Dark style.
I played Blades in the Dark as a player for like 6 or 8 sessions. Yeah, but that was the extent of it.
So that's pretty complicated.
I've never played.
Yeah.
No, I've never played either Shadowrun or Blades in the Dark, which is where this draws heavily from, or at least our version of it draws heavily from, right? So I haven't played either of those. The closest I've gotten is listening to some actual plays of these games. You know what I mean? Like, I've only tangentially been as an audience member to similar universes and styles.
So that's a major thing that we asked Brendan to do: play 6 sessions of a game and then start running it, because it's pretty crunchy. It's not like fuck, it's Dracula. We're like, all right, read the instructions and follow along. This is something that this is probably the most
more than 100 words.
Exactly, and this is probably the most complicated game we've ever run on the stream. Maybe Vampire was, but it was
you
built.
You really were streamlining Vampire a lot for us.
Yeah. And it's a game that's kind of built to be streamlined. It's like a theater kids RPG. Yeah. So like, if it was made 10 years later, it would be more of an indie RPG where it's all about storytelling and less about the crunch, but there's still a combat system that we barely paid attention to. Right. But yeah, this one is another animal entirely. And that's a good point, Alex. I didn't even think about Shadowrun. I think I've definitely played Shadowrun in the past.
Yeah.
I did too, but it was back in the 90s. So
yeah, when everything science fiction was actually science fiction and not like we said last week.
Right.
Where this is all stuff that happens.
Yeah, like, that apocalypse in 2012 that you all clearly remember.
Yeah. Close enough.
No, we had that in 2020. So
basically. Yeah. The slow apocalypse.
The slow apocalypse.
Yeah. It's like, oh, it's still happening. Slowly falling apart. Yeah. So I think what's interesting is there's a lot of I'm pretty sure the core book makes like frequent reference to Shadowrun lore. I'm not sure if that's actually true. That may just be in the sheet we had. Oh, look at that.
Nice, gorgeous.
My reference book.
Nice. I got back in the day. Go ahead.
That's like a big part of like what like post 2012 PBTA became, right? Is people taking like this new system, this new way of storytelling, less crunch, and then applying it to concepts that we know work, worlds that we know work. Like started with Apocalypse World and then went quickly into Dungeon World and so on, right? Like where they were just like, okay, let's make D&D into this, right? So it's cool that somebody went out there and said, hey, let's take Shadowrun and do the same thing. And how can we do the same concepts like Burning Edge and apply it in many ways to PBTA?
Yeah,
which is super neat. I love PBTA.
I was going to say, having played Blades in the Dark, I think it is actually a pretty good system to use for Shadowrun because Shadowrun is so gig based, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's sort of the leverage, like you said, gig based kind of game. I think it works better than. There's a couple of indie games that have become like iterate. You mentioned you mentioned Powered by the Apocalypse. There's Blades in the Dark. There's Fudge or Fate, depending on which version, and each one does its own thing better. I tend to, I think, lean on Fate games for whatever reason. I guess maybe slightly more story based, and there's something about Powered by the Apocalypse games that so back in the day, I used to run games. I was like the Johnny Appleseed of gaming clubs. I go around and I form gaming clubs at various colleges and stuff. So I onboarded a lot of people into tabletop RPGs, and a lot of it was through the other game, the D&D game, right? But I fell in love with indie games, but there are certain games where you release control so much that I couldn't get people who were more interested in video games and directed play and all that kind of stuff to accept a game where you roll and then you tell the GM or the storyteller what the results are. Now I love it. I mean, it's the most fun I could possibly have, but there's a weird divide where some people they need that direction, or that's what they came up learning. And it's interesting because you can't get them out of it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is there's that whole philosophy of there's 8 types of fun, right? So for some people, the appeal is that they are mathematically minded. One of my better friends that I play with all the time, Katie, she's excellent. We were in a big Pathfinder campaign together, and I loathe so much of Pathfinder, but she's an engineer. So she loved everything about the math and the crunch. And in my head, it's hard when you're dealing with a character sheet where when I'm raging as a barbarian and I'm rolling certain numbers and I'm doing all this math out to figure out that I missed a swing, that I can't find a way unless the GM does some GM magic to do a failing forward. You know what I mean? Which is hard. It's harder to do when you're doing just the math. You either hit or miss, and that's what people like about a lot of it too. But for me, I love the ideas. I like Genesis's system of fail with advantage, or you succeed with a disadvantage, right? You shot the guy, but he fell onto the door switch and now it's locked, right? I like these sort of ways to bring the storytelling element into the hands of the player as well. It's not just the GM as God telling the game. It's the cooperative. It feels more cooperative.
Yeah. And there's definitely ways you can play around with more traditional games. And make it work for almost everyone at the table, especially if you talk with your players beforehand and figure out what they like, what their yuck and what their yum is, and you could find some sort of common ground. I have no problem with people who love strategy and want that playmat out there and the 5-foot squares that's great. If you enjoy that, it's not necessary. I always wanted, I'm a wannabe geek in many ways, and I kind of always wanted to be that person. I have so many playmats and minis and Dwarven Forge miniatures. I'm never going to use these things. They've been in a box for 10 years, but I like the idea of them. I like the aesthetic, and I like the idea that I could play with a bunch of people who are grognards who know their game. But even beyond that, even if you're just in a mixed group where some people like the math and some people don't, there's things you can do that kind of just don't rely on crutches. Instead, just sort of be creative. Some of the stuff is actually in DMGs and the very basic tools we have as role players, where you can set stakes before a roll is done, so that instead of it's just a series of whiffs or whatever, you could say what happens when you fail, or give people the option to describe how they fail, right? As opposed to just saying, okay, you swing your axe, you're raging, nothing happens. Let's make the next round of combat. And all of that is like baked into even these early games. But for some reason, I guess my point was that it's hard to get people to break out of the molds that they're used to. And I think games like this or podcasts like this hopefully do a fair job of showing people there's other ways to have fun. And I don't know, I guess that's my big mission statement in this. That's what I would want out of it, because it's sort of I don't know, it's odd. I just don't understand why some people just can't find the fun that I find so easily in lots of different play styles.
Have we played a system that allowed us to use a die that was higher than 6?
Well, yeah. Vampire was 10.
Yeah, that's true. Vampire was 10.
We got. So it was.
We have not rolled a d20 though in this show.
No. But if I had to come up with an icon for it, guess what it would be? It's amazing. To be honest, that's what got me into role playing. I think it's one of the few things. Poly dice. Yeah. I remember the first time I saw a D4, I was like, "That's amazing."
And then you remember the first time you stepped on one too.
Right.
I think there is some appeal to that. Like, I'm a middle school teacher. I think most people who listen know this by now. And I ran a game club, or I still run a game club. But when we first started, it started just as a group of kids when Stranger Things came out, who all wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons. And we had 45 minutes after school, and after 2 weeks, and we still hadn't gotten through character creation. We ended up switching over to Dungeon World because playbooks made things so much easier, and it was a lot more streamlined, but they definitely all came with their big bag of the dice that they wanted to use. And like, sorry guys, you're just using these little guys here the whole time, So there is some appeal, and like the aesthetic of it, that's, people like.
Yeah. We gotta work on our gateway drug as gamers. To get kids into this, this is being broadcast to the world. How do we lure children?
I'm sure our audience is lots of kids. Yeah.
Yep.
They're deep into this. Like, all right. This there's a group out there. They run these games. One was in the 90s. Vampires in Las Vegas, and then it's what the 90s thought the 2000s would be in a Shadowrun. It's amazing. It's all for me.
Or as my students referred to it recently, the late 1900s.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. My brain was like, there's got to be a way that's wrong somehow, right? No.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy?
This is why Rebel's not on the show this week.
Right. Rebel was born in the late 1900s. So
oh my God.
There you go.
I mean, technically, we all could be, since there's 100 years in there. We could budget now. No.
Yeah.
So
what are y'all playing anything outside of this podcast? Have you been playing anything at all? Even like board gaming or anything for fun?
You want to go, Brennan?
Yeah, sure. I have a regular weekly game of the One Ring RPG.
Nice.
Oh, very cool.
Tolkien based, and I've been running that for about a year and a half now, so that's been really fun. The cool thing is there's an artist in the party
who
that's draws awesome. Everybody's characters all the time.
That's awesome. That's great.
You got to get me one of those.
Yeah.
I think I can't even remember the character I had played in your One Ring game in the before times, before the slow apocalypse happened. Do you remember my character? It's going to come back to me as soon as I get one piece of detail, but I can't. Right now, I'm mixing it up with everybody else who was playing in the game. I can't remember which one was mine.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was my abortive first attempt at running the One Ring.
Yeah.
And
after playing it for 6 sessions and then having to run it. No. Yeah, that was in the before time, and I can't remember what I feel like I was a bear shifter, but maybe that was just what I was considering.
No, I think that was Rebel.
Yeah. And I was a hobbit. I loved that. I clapped for that. And I was like like one of the halflings that like became the like Smeagol before he became one of those. So like I was living in the mud. It was gross. I was like the kind of hobbit who you don't want to go to his house. It's a dank basement. Yeah. Oh man. Oh, I forgot the character's name too, but it'll come to me.
But that's right. Yes, that's correct. I remember that now that you've reminded me.
How's the game going? How's the arc? Is it like how long has the game lasted in the One Ring? Because if I recall, that's part of the appeal.
It's been 20 years in game time now.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool. What's that in like dog years? Like what's that mean for like how long you been playing it? A year and a half? Did you say?
A year and a half, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I think one of the cool appeals of One Ring is that it's your characters go through like the trilogy go through a lot of time.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's cool.
Alex, are you playing anything?
So yes and no. I've been in since basically the minute COVID started, when we went into lockdown. Our local game shop went into lockdown, obviously, and then they actually went out of business over COVID. But the owner still is running an excellent Monster of the Week campaign for us, which was great. We're all monster hunters who happen to all work at the same newspaper, and we have like the editor, the person who it's like the IT person, the paper girl, and the person who does the like Dear Abby letters are all kind of keeping the town safe from the various monsters that come in. And then we also recently discovered, I don't know if you guys have played it, but you want an excellent board game recommendation, Disney's Villainous. Have you guys played Disney's Villainous at all?
I've seen it demoed at Toy Fair. Yeah, it looks awesome.
It looks awesome. Yeah, we got the base edition for Christmas and played 2 games in a row. We went through. This comes with 6 characters, and we played through almost all of them that night because we had so much fun. If it wasn't too late, we would have played the whole thing. And then I got the Marvel edition, which I think is even better. And I just snagged the Loki expansion the other day, so I'm like slowly going to be building up the whole thing. It's cool. It's a cool game.
We got the Marvel one again on the strength of seeing it at Toy Fair from long ago. God, it's sad. But yes, and I gave it to I got it for my niece for her birthday. She's a big Marvel head, big comic book reader. So I'm glad to hear it's even better. That I can't wait to play it. That sounds like
it's super cool. Awesome. I like any. Yeah, it's neat in that I don't know how much you know about it, Brendan, but you basically pick a villain, and each villain has their own similar map to each other, but they each have their own win objectives, and everyone's trying to do something totally different and screw over the other villains. So you're just trying to accomplish your goal first. So like Captain Hook has to get Peter Pan back to the Jolly Roger and take him out, while King Richard from Robin Hood just has to collect as much money as possible. Right. So it's very different campaigns for each person, but you're playing against each other while also trying to accomplish like goals that make sense for the film that they're from. It's really neat.
Right.
That's awesome. I think I gotta meet up with the niece at some point and take advantage of her birthday gift.
You do. It's cool.
Back in April of 2020, there was a bundle of holding. Is that did I get that right?
Yeah.
For it was for healthcare relief, for raising money for healthcare professionals back when we had to stay in for 2 weeks. And I bought into it, and I did, I got the full expansion or whatever it was, and it was a bunch of solo games, solo RPGs, I think it was, or solo tabletop. I'm pretty sure it was solo RPGs, because I figured I was going to be stuck inside for quite a while, and I wanted to play something. I didn't really have an opportunity. Things have been busy for the last 2 years, so I just literally this morning dusted off the first game from that collection that I thought I could maybe make a dent in. It's called Ruins of the Undercity. It's I think a GM-less kind of adventure thing for Labyrinth Lord, which I only read the first few pages of it, but from what I understand, that Labyrinth Lord is a like an old school RPG. It's kind of mimicking in many ways original Dungeons and Dragons, and I apologize for fans who happen to be this far into Dungeon Not Included and who are offended that I don't know the details, but it is some sort of like early D&D clone, and it's supposed to be GM-less, and there's a bunch of random tables to determine all the nuts. Again, me from 5 years ago, I'd be like, oh, this isn't indie, this isn't storytelling, this isn't like, I want to have a collaborative storytelling experience with a bunch of friends at a table, and I still love that. But me, that's a little bit more mature now and realizes there's lots of different kinds of fun. I'm like, maybe I do want to roll dice and see if I could fight the monster in the dungeon that makes no sense why it's there. Right? Maybe that could be fun. Maybe that's something interesting. I'll try to play it at work and let you all know if it's worth diving into. But
there's a couple of really old ones like that from the 80s. There was a Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe one.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
I did a
character, and you have the book itself is generating essentially the stats and stuff. Sort of like a hybrid choose your own adventure plus D&D kind of thing.
Yeah. In fact, was it Labyrinth Lord? I kind of remember the 70s or 80s book. I thought it was Labyrinth Lord. Maybe I'm like completely going nuts here. It was? Oh, so like if you open up the cover, you would take a pencil and drop it randomly on this thing. Wow. And it determined your random stats for the rest of the adventure, which was basically a choose your own adventure. And I always thought that gimmick was interesting. That's interesting. I'm going to look into that. I wonder if they just brought that brand back for some reason. But So
right.
Just trying to keep the gaming alive between Mondays.
Yeah,
is what I'm doing.
I actually play a lot more than you think.
Oh yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you play? What are you playing right now?
I also have 2 other games that are rare in person that have been happening since last year, but are now not happening.
Yeah,
but thanks to reasons. But one of them is a Fate game where we came up with the characters first and then decided what system we were going to use.
Cool.
In which we have a magician's apprentice who got kicked out for being too pervy. A goblin hero that nobody outside of the goblin culture has heard of.
I like it.
And a rat king who is bit by a werewolf.
Awesome.
So is the Rat King really just a bunch of rats tied together and then also bit by a werewolf? Is that?
Yeah, the rats can separate themselves.
Oh,
they turn into the Rat King when they tie their tails together. So
that's.
But awesome. Is it only one of them a werewolf, or is the whole thing collectively?
The whole thing is a werewolf.
I love that.
Amazing.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah, and then I decided to do Fate with that just because they were such off the wall concepts.
Yeah.
That it seemed like
so
It fits well. Yeah, that's awesome. Oh man, lots of good stuff. I know we have some viewers. If you want to share something, if you want to come in and comment and ask some questions or leave a comment about what you're playing right now, we'd love to hear it. It'd be a lot of fun. So yeah, we could talk a little bit more shop regarding the future of this story arc for Dungeon Not Included. Do we think we're gonna play? Do you think we're gonna be gearing up to like a bunch of enemies that are eventually going to target us or something like that?
Oh yeah, you've got a lot of enemies, so there's going to be some complications this time out.
Awesome.
Where they come after you during the downtime section, causing problems that you have to deal with, essentially.
Awesome. Love that.
I like it. Good. I like.
Yeah,
you
did that job for
Ares something.
Ares Macrotech, which is why they are not at war with you anymore. Basically, you get a -3, you're in bad shape. They're basically, they really hate you.
Yeah, and we have a lot of we've ruffled a few feathers. We'll see.
You have.
And that's the fun.
You've blamed a lot of corporations for your hijinks. So.
Yeah. I do have one question about the game system that I don't know. I'm not going to put the pressure on you that you would know it off the top of your head. What do races or species or whatever do in this game? I don't think it doesn't seem to have come up.
I haven't really done much with that. I believe that there's like a couple of things that you get when you're one of the races, but that is very it's way less important than it was in Shadowrun.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I imagined that, and I think for good reason. And I forgot that I was an elf. Polly is an elf. Yeah. And I completely I've not played it that way.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, Brennan is frozen. There he is.
Was it me?
I forgot that was even a thing, frankly, because I would have been playing more with Jackie waking up as different species too.
You should probably wake up as a troll or an orc sometime. Yeah.
Right.
Huh.
But
yeah, and the only reason I picked elf for Polly is that someone who's been around forever, like a mushroom, like the oldest living organism on the planet is, I think, a mushroom in Michigan, I want to say. It's been a long time since I read that article. Don't if for all the kids listening, if you have a report due tomorrow, look that up. I'm not sure if that fact is correct, but yeah, I think there's like the oldest living organism might be a giant fungus underneath the Great States or Great Lakes or something. All right, this was good catching up and kind of figuring out what we're doing and why we're doing it. But I think we're gonna push off until next week when we have a full house, hopefully, and we get back to the game of Runners in the Shadows. Do we have anything else we want to share? Anything we want to plug or tell people about?
Katanas and Trench Coats is available for pre-order.
Ooh, is it?
Ooh,
yeah.
Oh wow! All right,
I will post up about it. I'll send you a link so that you can post up about it, Frank. So
nice. All right, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's the 90s. It's going with our 90s theme.
Late 1900s.
Yeah. It's the 1990s darkest cosmos where there are immortals who run around chopping each other's heads off, reminiscent of a movie that we cannot name.
Right.
There are vampires, of course. There are ghosts. There are werebeasts. No werewolves. Perfect. Because the wolves have died out. So.
Oh man! I just want to read this book. That's great.
Yeah,
and car wizards. Car wizards.
Yes, I know we discussed that. That was awesome. All right. Can't wait to hear more about that. Alex, you got anything?
No, nothing. I got work. That's it.
Visit Alex at work. Find him. It's a little
right.
It's a little ARG.
He's a school teacher.
Don't.
And
I don't.
My
trouble.
Do not do
my
that.
Students don't know anything about this. So
do not do that.
No.
Do not. This is not an ARG. Nope. Do not try to find Alex. There's a reason why his connection is that bad. He is in a bunker well below the Earth's crust. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm gonna start up a new this little side project called Anime Lunch. I had no plans on discussing this anywhere, but although we posted on the internet, but it was all teasers, no one knows what it is. It's about anime. So cool. Yeah, it's also about like 90s anime.
Is it also about lunch though?
It is. There was a little bit about lunch. Yeah.
Perfect. There you go. No false advertisement involved.
Yeah. No, it's pretty much what it says on the tin. Thank you all for joining us on this special episode. This was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for being here. I wave bye now like my son does. Bye
bye.
But yes, we should be back on regular schedule next week, next Monday, at 8:00 Eastern. So stay tuned while I play us off with some music. It's not gonna work. Down. That's not gonna work, Frank. Bye, everybody. Bye. Countdown to end of show. Whoa. All right. Bye, everyone.